Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. We talk a lot about horror on this channel, but the real horror out there is how easy it is for your data to fall in the hands of disreputable people. That's why today's video is sponsored by Aura. While you're enjoying today's spooky video, data brokers, those things that go bump on the web, could already be selling your information to scanners, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, your health records, your relatives, they could all be out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests, just for me. It was simple to use and very intuitive, and I had barely gotten out of the setup process, and it was already blocking over 20 data broker requests on my behalf. Aura protects your passwords, your banking information, everything you need for day-to-day online life. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use my information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, other sensitive information. Things like a certain YouTube channel that you all enjoy listening to so much. Aura also does much more to protect me and my family from online threats, the kind you can't see. It comes with other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more, without having to download several different apps. It really is just that easy to set up, and best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I hear you saying, but Dr. Plague, I have one or two of these tools already. But, dear readers, not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Readers of my fine tales can tell you why that never ends well. Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping me safe so I can focus on other tasks like finishing my latest book or uploading my most recent video. I value my privacy, and I know you value yours. You can go to Aura.com, that's AURA.com, to start your 2-week free trial. You can also check out the link below and start your free trial with Aura. So why not give Aura a try and protect yourself from the real monsters out there? I always knew there was some aspect of my life that was cursed. I tried to be reasonable about it, just assuming that I was making bad decisions. But there's only so much tragedy one can take as misfortune. I had more than my fair share in the past 20 years. It started with the birth of my son, David. His mother, Camilla, the love of my life, she became a shell. After giving birth to David, something happened in her mind. Something broke. She lost the ability to speak instantly, and as years went by, she slowly forgot how to do many things. How to drive, how to read, how to dress herself, until she was finally stuck in a wheelchair. I say forgot because there was nothing wrong with her body. According to our doctors, her nerves, her organs, her muscles, everything was in perfect order. It was all just her mind. It was unlearning all that she learned since she was born. Memories and personalities took much longer to go. I could tell from the tears that she sometimes cried. When they stopped, I knew Camilla was mentally gone. That took about 10 years. It was enough to break me, but I didn't have the luxury of curling up into a fetal position and melting into a puddle for long. I had a son to raise. From day one, David was perfect. David could do no wrong in any aspect of his life. Incredibly intelligent, progressing faster in school than any of his classmates. It was nothing newsworthy. There had been greater child prodigies, but I think he was just holding back. He had this spark in his eye when confronted with a problem. It was a confidence and a hint of amusement that told me that he had the answer already. As for his behavior at home, he was a pillar of the family. No father should ever have to lean on his son so early in life, but that's what I did. He was a rock. That's why I never got in his way when he wanted to do something. I let him do as he pleased because I had no reason to doubt that he could look after himself. I expected some kind of ego to develop. I expected David to take advantage of me and my weak parenting. But he never did. David graduated from university at 18 and found a job almost immediately, thanks to some connections with other students. He was sending money home every month to pay for a caregiver who would look after Camilla. The caregiver being an ex-professor from his university. I assumed she was getting more money than what she was earning at the school. All those years, since the moment he could more or less look after himself, I heard the phrase, "Thank God you have David," from everyone who knew our family situation. You might even be thinking that right now, while reading this. Yet, I could never quite share that feeling. Without any real reason, I wasn't as happy with David as others were. He intimidated the hell out of me. He had this way of looking at me, reaching out with love, and even as his father, I could never make that connection. I couldn't even bring myself to like him. My son treated me better than any son had ever treated his father, and in my heart I felt the same way about him as I do about strangers I pass in an alleyway. I just wanted to keep my distance. That good he brought into my life should have helped me balance things out just a little bit, but tragedy always found me. I lost family. I lost friends. I watched my colleagues betray me and my work crumble. Even my pets didn't last long, so I stopped getting them. And although I never told anyone, I started to feel the reason for all of it was David. In my head, as damaged as it was, I blamed him. Not just for Camilla, but for everything. Everything. To see him leave the house was probably the happiest I'd been in a long time. That is until that caregiver he sent arrived a month or so later. "Hi, Mr. Samuels," she said, walking into the house. "My name's Lilith Evans. I know your son, David." She shook my hand with a smile. My heart just about popped out of my chest when I saw her, this beautiful woman. I went cold again when she mentioned David. She didn't falter in her enthusiasm. Lilith explained why she was there, tears in her eyes when she spoke about how kind and amazing David was to care about his ailing mother. I don't think I said a word to her in our first meeting. I was too shocked, giving her hums and nods. I did speak to her the next day, but it was like speaking to David. I just ended up bending in her favor, letting her do what she would, taking care of Camilla and leaving me to my work. She had the same eyes as David, pouring with kindness, but for me, lacking any soul. I decided to give her the same treatment and just stay out of her way. "Mr. Samuels, we're leaving," she called to me from the front door. "Okay," I called just before she shut the door. Alone, Lilith was taking Camilla on a walk and had been doing so every day for the last 2 years. It hurt to say it like that, taking her for a walk, as if she was an animal to be looked after. Even now, with bitterness towards myself, I can't help but think it was a waste anyway. I focused on my work, and when I finished, I turned to the TV. It was good at distracting me and getting me away from my problems, from my feelings. I could go on a whole day feeling nothing, while something inside of me was begging to be resolved. I ignored it even then, staring at the mouths of actors I didn't know, trying to see how fake they were. I fell asleep. I woke up later, much later. The sun had settled and the room was dark. I had only the light from the TV to help me spot the furniture. Without a single question going through my mind, I went through the house, closing curtains, checking windows, locking doors. I grabbed a glass of water in the kitchen. I rubbed my eyes for too long, the light hurting them, so I just turned them all off. I would feel my way upstairs to the bedroom. There was a rail on one side of the stairs where Camilla's chairlift was mounted. My fingers traced along it. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what. Trudging into the bedroom, I saw my unmade bed in the nightlight coming from the window. The cool blue spoke to my heart, and I fell onto the sheets. It was perfect. I knew I could only enjoy it for a moment. I had to get dressed and close the curtains, but I argued with myself before I finally got up. The window gave me a clear view of the backyard, the adjacent lake, and, of course, the woods. I saw the neighbor's swing set moving slightly in the breeze. Not squeaking, thankfully. I had snuck over one night and oiled the chains. A light flickered among the trees. I looked at it, wanting to see something. A beam of light, a flashlight. It turned away and continued deeper into the woods, though. I thought it was more than likely my other neighbor's going after his dog again. It tended to escape, and I closed the curtains. When I turned around, I saw that the door to Camilla's bedroom across from mine was still open. Her wheelchair wasn't in the corner of the room, and Lilith usually closed it after putting Camilla to bed. I then realized what was wrong when I climbed the stairs. The chairlift was at the bottom. Lilith hadn't returned with Camilla after her walk. I immediately called Lilith's phone, but she didn't pick up. The phone would keep ringing, only to time out. That left only David. He picked up almost immediately. "David, Lilith hasn't come back with Camilla," I told him. "Mom's here with me. I wanted to see her. Did Lilith tell you this afternoon?" I was asleep, I stuttered, remembering telling Lilith not to wake me up when I was napping. Maybe she left me a note. I'm sorry. Why did you want to see your mother? He could tell I was tense, even though Camilla was mostly gone in my eyes. I still cared enough about her memory to want her to be safe. "Relax. I just wanted to," David explained in a calm voice. "I haven't seen either of you in 2 years. Just wanted to see Mom and Lilith while driving through the neighborhood." "Where in town?" "Oh, Lionel Street, I think. No, where are you staying?" David gave me the address of a motel and told me he would come around in the morning if I was available. Of course, I said I was, and we ended the call shortly after that. I sat down at the end of my bed, fell back, and was asleep as my head hit the sheets. Looking back, I was stressed. David was back. "How's Aunt Grace?" David asked from the other side of the table. He held a cup of coffee with both hands as if warming them. He had a kind smile. "She passed away shortly after her husband," I said. "I tried not to think about losing my sister. About a week after you left." I said that last sentence with a little too much anger, but I tried to pass it off as sadness. David looked down, his face painted with concern. After a long moment, I finished my coffee, and David looked up again. His black hair had grown into flowing waves around his chiseled face. "I liked her," he said. I mumbled. "Where's Camilla?" "Lilith is looking after her." "Dad," David sighed. "Do you want to see her? Do you want Lilith to bring her here?" I just want to know where she is." "Where else would she be?" It was a simple question. David was being reasonable. I just didn't like his attitude. Seeing him again put me on edge. Looking at him, I couldn't find a single fault. He had grown into a handsome young man, but he looked nothing like me. I didn't see any of my weakness in him. "Why are you back in town? Problems at work?" "No, work is good," David sighed again. "Speaking of work, I'll come back another time with Mom. You still have those meetings every Thursday, right?" I nodded. "Okay, I'll leave you to it then." David got up and left. I didn't follow. I listened to his footsteps and heard him close the front door. I let out a breath, something I'd been holding in longer than I felt I knew. My heart was pounding. I picked up my empty coffee cup and put it in the sink. I then walked over to grab David's. The cup was still scalding hot. I hissed and wiped my fingers. It had been over half an hour since I poured it, and it still hadn't cooled down. I dumped the hot contents and rinsed the cup out angrily. There was always something to send me over the edge. I ended up taking that cup out of the sink and throwing it as hard as I could into the trash, wanting it to break, but some other trash cushioned the fall. I spent the whole day staring at a whiteboard and a ream of paper on my desk. Markers were at hand. I needed to write something on the board, but I was too distracted. Being stuck in my head, I couldn't help but play out the talk I'd had with David. No matter which way I looked at it, I couldn't help but see myself as an asshole. I didn't really care about Camilla. I was happy seeing my son, and damn it, I respected him enough for sensing my discomfort and leaving when he did. "What the hell is wrong with me?" I murmured. "Seriously, I blinked, and it was night again. I put the marker down and made my rounds. Curtains, windows, doors, finally ending up in my bedroom. I looked out at the lake. The swings were squeaking again. A breeze rustled the trees more than it disturbed the lake. I heard the familiar pitter-patter of droplets hitting the earth outside. Rain? Where are the clouds? I said to myself, looking up at the sky. I could see the stars. No rain on my house, and not a droplet hit my face, but I heard rain nonetheless. I looked down at the ground, but I couldn't see anything. Out of curiosity, but mostly escaping my own thoughts, I marched downstairs, seeing as I was already dressed, and opened the kitchen door to the backyard. The sound of rain was closer, but when I pointed my phone light at the ground, I didn't see anything. I then listened closer and realized the sound was coming from the nearby trees. It didn't sound like leaves. There was no way I was confusing the two. I walked over to the tree and was almost immediately soaked in water. I stepped back out of the downpour and turned on my phone light again. From the branches and the leaves, rain fell thick and fast. It pooled on the ground and soaked into the earth. The sight of it left me silent and thoughtless. When seeing something that just didn't make any sense, my mind struggled to try to make sense of it. What snapped me out of it was the sound my ears picked up amongst the patter. Crying. Weeping. Coming from the tree, so low and pathetic. It was the kind of moaning sob that only those who were grieving could make. It was how I cried the many nights that followed Camilla's degradation. Only that was a long time ago. Yet the thought of Camilla seemed to get the cogs in my mind moving again. I looked down at my phone and wiped a few stray droplets from the screen, hovering over David's number. I wanted to call him, but I knew no matter what he said, I would just want the call to end. Instead, I turned back to the house. The weeping followed me as I entered. Even when the sounds of the drops faded, those cries echoed. I got into my car and drove off the property, heading to the motel David was staying at. It probably sounded hypocritical for caring all of a sudden, but if you were confronted with trees that sounded like you in a moment where your heart was breaking, going to Camilla was the best thing on my mind. Arriving at the motel, I saw a few cars parked out front. One room had the lights on. I heard the TV playing through the thin walls. I could understand that. For some people, it was the only way they could get to sleep. I saw David's silver four-door parked in front of one of the dark rooms, so I assumed that it had to be his. Definitely not the best place to be looking after one's ailing mother, but I didn't care to question it until I was standing in front of the motel. I wanted to call Lilith and ask her what she was thinking leaving Camilla with David in such a place, but then I noticed her car was there as well. It made me angry. With a sudden wave of responsibility for my wife washing over me, I marched up to the door and thumped it with the meat of my hand. "David, it's me. Let me in, or..." "Jeremy?" It shattered everything inside of me. My heart felt so hollow that I thought it might collapse in on itself. My bones were glass, cracking under the weight of my flesh. I stepped back from the door and it opened. The light was on inside. Camilla was standing in the doorway, her body frail and skinny. Her eyes were wide and scared. I knew her body had wasted away, but it seemed to be less saddening when she was in a wheelchair. When she was standing and moving, she looked like a starving prisoner. Yet, I was the one who buckled first. She took a shaky step towards me and fell forward. I caught her in my arms and held her against me. She was so light. A bony hand reached up and touched the side of my head as I cried into her shoulder. As her fingertips graced my skin, there was a cold plunge and a sudden fall. It was the same sensation of suddenly falling into a dream and waking up. Only this time I was soaked in rain, kneeling in front of a dark, empty motel room. The door was open. Blood had stained the doorway. I was breathing with a burst of adrenaline. I was in danger, or at least I was a moment ago. I stood up quickly and stepped into the motel room. There was blood on the bed, the walls, the curtains. I could see the dark shapes of bodies on the ground and an empty wheelchair in the corner. I stepped out, unable to investigate any further. When I had the stomach for it, I trudged over to reception. I had to make a call. Camilla and Lilith's bodies were covered and carted away. Camilla was untouched, not a scratch on her. Same could not be said for Lilith. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition, but her wallet and car remained in the parking lot. It was safe to assume that it was her. David is the prime suspect in the investigation, although I don't hold much hope for that. It's only because I said so that he's being investigated at all, but the receptionist reports a different name, a different man entirely, renting that room at the motel. There was no record of David returning to town. Nobody to say he wasn't either, though. Lilith was the only real connection, but there was a problem with that as well. There was no transfer of money into her account from David, or anyone. She was a professor at his university, but he never took her class. Nobody there had ever seen the two of them speak. From the outside, it looked like a random person was playing caregiver for my wife, and I just went along with it. I didn't say anything about what I had seen before finding the bodies. I haven't told them about the ill feelings I had towards my son. It's better to leave as much of the unexplained out of my statement. Yet, I believe, since no one has found a reasonable explanation for what happened, mine is the only one that matters. Mine is the only one that pieces things together, that confirms the fears I have regarding my son. That there's something wrong with him. That he isn't the kind of man everyone thinks he is. Only, I'm too old, too afraid to do anything about it. I haven't had any communication with David since. I retired from my job last year, and I live alone. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Sarah ASMR42, Grim Reaper, and TomBoiTopUwU for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a special thanks to Grim Reaper, who appears to have subscribed not just on YouTube, but also on my Patreon. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you, and your support is always appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon, or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. My time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books, I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.